Hi, everybody, and welcome. This video is just to introduce some key concepts in the course and to talk about some vocabulary that we're going to use again and again and again. And I've titled this video, The Practice of Data Analysis, to kind of introduce you into the big picture of where data analysis fits in the bigger picture of Head Start, and especially how it's embedded in the kinds of concepts around how data is used in Head Start programs generally by both data analysts and non-data analysts. So just to get started, and what we're going to focus on here, we're going to use terms in this course a lot that may or may not be familiar with you, depending on how much work you've done building up sort of data literacy vocabulary. And so there's a universal vocabulary that we use across the board, and there's some specialized ways we talk about this in Head Start. So we're going to introduce some of these terms because it's important. One of these is the term data. We're going to talk about what that means when we talk about it. We're going to also talk about data capacity, which is really important because it's a big piece of why data analysts are important in Head Start, but also how Head Start programs are adapting to the use of data in the present. Data analysis, this is actually key. It's important for us to define. It's a Data Analyst Certificate program. So we want to talk about what it means to do data analysis and what it means to be a person who does data analysis, to actually be a data analyst. And so we're going to talk about what these terms mean and sort of define them as we get going to give us a nice solid foundation. So data is information in context. So when you're talking about data in programs, it isn't just numbers. It's not just this symbolic representation of a quantity. It's all the things that go on around that. And this will become very important as we talk about the role of a data analyst. It's very, very important to remember that you do not just look at numbers in the abstract. They are all deeply embedded in very specific contexts in the Head Start world. So data can be quantitative. It can be those numbers that we were talking about. You could have the height of a child in inches. That's a relatively straightforward number. Their weight in inches, a very straightforward number. On the 21st of this month, this child was present in the classroom, or this child was absent in the classroom. These are fairly straightforward quantitative numbers. Counts, measurements, and so on are what you're typically going to see in terms of quantitative data in Head Start programs. But data can also be qualitative, and this is a little bit harder because here the data is softer, and oftentimes there are categories the data has to be coded to fit into. So descriptions, category labels, and so on, these are an important part of what we're going to be working with. If we're looking at a family screening tool, which section of the PFCE framework does a particular question fit into? That's a qualitative question. If you're looking at open-ended notes that a family advocate took while they were filling out the family strengths screening tool, that's going to be qualitative data. It's open-ended notes. It may or may not be something that's easily quantifiable. So we encounter both qualitative and quantitative data all the time. Our ability to use that data depends on our data capacity. Data capacity refers to the ability to use data to achieve goals. Organizations have a collective capacity to use data. So think of your organization as a whole and all the different trainings that go into how people use data and all the professional development around how people use data, hiring people who are able to use data, but also the systems that are there to allow those individuals to use data within the program. Does your organization allow people to contribute to data discussions across the board? Individuals also have their own capacity to use data. If you are just a person who's been teaching in an early childhood classroom for 20 years and you've been around, you've seen the way things are done, but you have never really been trained how to read a chart, you've never been trained how to actually look at data and to analyze data, you might be very smart, very capable, and really engaged in what you do every day, but you might not have a high level of data capacity simply because you've never been trained to it. This happens all the time. Smart, capable people doing great jobs at what they've been trained to do and what the expectations have been in the past encounter data in new ways and need to build up their ability to use data. My guess is that if you're in this class, you already have a pretty decent data capacity foundation already, and you are here because you explicitly want to improve your data capacity. But remember that individual capacity to use data operates in an organizational framework. So you can be really, really great at using data, But if you don't have a system that's going to let you do that and empower you to actually do things with that data, it's going to be challenging. So data capacity has this organizational and individual dimension, and we always have to keep both in mind as we go. The relationship between these two is often more important than each one individually because they both highly depend on each other. You got to pursue both. Data analysis is the process of viewing, cleaning, transforming, and evaluating data with the goal of making informed decisions. And this is an important thing to keep in mind because data analysis is not just one skill, but a collection of skills. And if you're thinking about what it is you're going to do as a data analyst, you don't just crunch numbers. You are crunching numbers in that bigger context. So when you're making choices about how am I going to clean this data up, how am I going to transform it into a way to make it useful, and how am I going to make decisions based on this data, all of that requires a knowledge of more than just number crunching. You have to be able to look holistically at everything that's going on. It also doesn't have to be about decision making. It can be about informed decisions, yes, but also you can draw informed conclusions. A lot of times when you're doing data exploration, you're not really sure what you're going to find. You don't quite know how it's going to fit. You're not really trying to make a decision at that point. You're just trying to figure out what's going on. And this is where informed conclusions is a big part of what you're going to do. The reality in Head Start is there's a lot of this second bullet point here. There's a lot of informed conclusions beyond decision making. You will find that in a world in which compliance has really been the center for so long, and in which changes mix compliance and quality improvement, and you have to do all these different kinds of projects, very often you're going to find yourself in a situation in which you can't make the decision you want to make because the data isn't in the right format. It's not in the right structure. Your program management platform wasn't set up to give you the information the way that you need it. And Child Plus, COPA, Go Engage, they're all working on getting better at these things, but they all have gaps. Every program's different. So even when they fix everything, it's still fixing it to kind of the average program when no program really is average. So a lot of times early on, you can be frustrated because you can't make the decision. But this second bullet point, drawing informed conclusions, is just as important because it's going to make sure that when you make those decisions, you're doing it on the basis of high quality, good data. And one of the big things then that you really want to focus on as a data analyst is going through and making sure that you as an individual are able to do all of these things. A person who cleans, collects, transforms data to help make informed decisions. You're the person who's going to be doing these things. And as the person who's going to be doing these things, it's an important part of getting comfortable with this complex interrelationship of all these different pieces. Now, my guess is that you were not sent to this program because you were a teacher who just got promoted. You're somebody who's already working with data. So this is going to be really familiar to you. You already know that you can't just go into a closet, wave the data wizard magic wand, and come out with things. You've got to go talk to people about what's really going on. If you're in a really large organization, that might actually be one of the hardest things about your job is finding out what's going on in centers, in sites, on the ground when you actually use this stuff. One of the biggest things we do want to think about as we're exploring this course, and we're talking about all the things we're doing all our work in Excel, is sticking with these foundations. In Head Start, the most important thing we can always remember is data is a holistic thing. Organizations vary widely in their capacity to use data, and so do individuals. Data analysis is both about exploring and finding things in data that lead you to interesting conclusions, and also making decisions based on data. And the role of the data analyst is to facilitate that across the board.